how about the Georgia appellate court taking up the Fani Willis case, suggesting maybe she is going to get DQ'd from this thing after all? Tell us the headlines here.
Yeah, so today I got a text message right when the news was breaking, and so I immediately took to X and posted it out there. And it's as I predicted, the Court of Appeals, because this issue of Fani Willis and whether she has a conflict of interest and how she has behaved, quite frankly, in an irresponsible way in bringing this case. Because it's such an important issue, the trial judge took the unusual step of allowing the parties to take his order up on appeal prior to the trial. It's an interlocutory appeal is what we call it. It's unusual, but it can happen. But the Court of Appeals also has to agree to hear it. Megyn, it's discretionary. And so they had like 45 days and the clock was ticking. I think it was going to be Monday. Today, they said, yes, we are going to agree to hear the appeal. And so now we move on to the next phase. There's going to have to be briefing by the parties and, of course, oral argument in a couple of months. And it's going to be heard by a panel of 3 judges. And it's going to take, of course, a majority of that. So 2 judges on the panel of 3 are going to have to decide with the defense in order to disqualify Fani Willis. But that's not all. They're asking that the case be dismissed in addition to her being disqualified. What we don't know is who we're going to get on the panel, who are the 3 judges. We just don't know that right now. But if there's 2 judges that at a minimum believe that she should be disqualified, the case is going to be effectively over because there's no other prosecutor in their right mind that would want it. Because Megyn, the odor of mendacity will remain in the case even if another prosecutor gets on it, and it's irreparable. They would have to start over from scratch, and it's just the kind of thing that's too big of an ask for another prosecutor. If they
Phil,
get
when do we find out? When do we find out which panel they pulled to hear this appeal?
Well, we don't know yet. It's going to have to be assigned to a panel. And of course, these things rotate, right? It's not the same panel, I don't believe, that agreed to hear it. It's going to be a second panel. So we're going to have, at this point, at least 6 judges involved in the decision, the combined decision to take the case and then what to do with it. So we don't yet know how it's going to be assigned, but that's going to be something, obviously, we're going to have to watch very closely.
Does the case keep moving? Phil, does the case keep moving in the meantime while they take this up on appeal? Does Fani Willis get to go forward at the trial level?
Until now, I'm of the belief that it does not, because once the case goes up on appeal, and up until today, it was not officially on appeal. Now it's officially on appeal. And so I think maybe the argument was that some of the other business of the trial court could continue. I am of the belief that now that the case is officially in the Court of Appeals, that the trial judges divested of jurisdiction to take any action. And I think even if it's unwise, because you don't want to do a whole lot of work preparing the case, gearing it up for trial, if it turns out the prosecutor who's representing the state at these pretrial matters is not supposed to be there. So I think that as a practical
bombshell. That is just a true bombshell, Julian. I don't know how closely you follow this, but Phil and we were on this case from the beginning in a very detailed way. And this is huge. I mean, we talked about the inside straight. Georgia very well could go away. If Fani Willis gets disqualified, it's done. And this one needs to go away for Trump because he can't, on the 2 federal cases, he can pull the prosecutor off of that, but he can't pull them off of New York and Georgia. New York's going to be resolved before November. Then there's Georgia lingering.
Oh, I think this case will go away. I mean, look, I was critical of what Donald Trump did with Rosenberger in Georgia. I don't know that it crossed the line into criminal behavior. I have my concerns about that. I've written about that. The use of the racketeering laws is almost unprecedented in a circumstance like this. And remember, Fani Willis herself was conflicted, just the way Bragg was conflicted and Letitia James were conflicted. She held a fundraiser for one of the opponents of the target of the initial investigation. So she was deeply conflicted, and she's been very clear about her dislike of Donald Trump. These conflicts for these prosecutors are a big deal. And then when it crosses over into what she was accused of, which was basically a kickback scheme in which she hired an unqualified boyfriend, spent over $500,000, sent him over $500,000 He was then kicking that money back to her. She claims she paid it back, but she's got no records. It was all in cash. I mean, sort of all of that stuff is just hard to swallow. So I think not only will on appeal is there likely to be a finding of a conflict of interest, I think she's got to be careful about potential perjury charges here. But this is another case where it's sort of, this has become, I sort of sometimes wish Tom Wolfe were still alive, because this is such great material for sort of a discussion about this charade that a lot of this lawfare has become. I mean, if Donald Trump did something wrong, there should be consequences, clearly. But the way that the left has behaved, bringing these cases, waiting 8 years in the case of the New York case we were just discussing, waiting 4 years in the case of the election interference just before the election, it's outrageous. This is election interference. What's happening is bringing these cases, and I'm not a Donald Trump supporter. I voted for Hillary in 2016. I voted for Biden in 2020. I didn't vote for Donald Trump at all. But waiting to bring these cases until the eve of election is abuse of authority. And at some point, there needs to be a reckoning here, because this is exactly the kind of thing that Republicans are going to do to Democrats when they get into power. And Democrats will have no one to blame but themselves for not speaking up and for countenancing the abuse of the legal system the way it's being abused in these cases.
Well, so true. Phil, I've been dying to ask you about Nathan Wade's interview on ABC. We ran this soundbite the other day on the show, but your reaction I'd really love. Can we run SOT 18?
So you didn't realize when you took the case, your life was really going to be under a microscope?
I did not realize that my life would be in danger. The microscope, I don't have a problem with. The truth is, if the worst that you could find was the fact that I had a relationship with someone, or that I happen to be going through a divorce, that's okay. That's okay. I have nothing to hide.
That's the worst that you could find. That's how he styles what happened to him, Phil. That's, that they found out I was in a relationship and got a divorce.
Well, look, when you're in a hole, the first thing you have to do is stop digging. And I wonder if the judges on the Court of Appeals were watching this news this week, because that was just a couple of days ago, right? And just today we get the news that, of course, the disqualification issue is going to be before the Court of Appeals. His testimony, as I recall it, his and hers, by the way, from the disqualification hearings, was that they were no longer a romantic item before the Trump indictment, which I think was the first week of August of 2023. In that interview, he said that they ended their relationship towards the end of 2023. Well, which one was it? Okay. Were you telling the truth on ABC, or were you telling the truth under oath in court, or maybe neither one? We just don't know, because you can't square what he's saying to ABC with what was said in court. So it's just another example of digging.
Well, Phil, we know he perjured himself. We know he perjured. Nathan Wade, you can come sue me. You lied under oath in your divorce proceedings. Sue me if I'm not saying the right thing. Go ahead, bring it. Sue me if that's not true. You lied. You lied under oath in your divorce proceedings. And I believe you lied in your proceeding with Fani Willis. But now he's trying to forget, oh, I just had a divorce, Phil. That's the worst they could find on me.
Well, that's not the worst they can find on him. The worst they found on him was that he was arguably giving kickbacks after this no-bid contract that his girlfriend gave him to prosecute a case that he had no business being on. That's the worst thing. But on top of all of that, and it's not the fact that they were sleeping together that I or anybody really, I think, has a problem with. It's the fact of the money. It's the fact of the not telling the truth to the court. It's the fact of filing what I believe, in my opinion, to be a false document and affidavit in the court, and what I believe to be false testimony in court. That is turning the justice system on its ear. It's making a mockery of the judicial system. All of these lawfare cases make a mockery of it, and it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to me as a member of the legal profession. This is not what the court system is supposed to be about. This is not how lawyers are supposed to behave. And it's the kind of thing that makes me feel disgusting. I mean, it's just ugly, and it's the kind of
She didn't ask him any of that. No follow-ups by that ABC reporter. She failed.